Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another GLNC webinar. We're really thrilled today to be presenting on consumer trends in food and drink. My name is Charlotte Strand. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager for the Grains and Legumes Nutrition Council in Australia. At GLNC, we're really focused on bringing you the latest up-to-date information when it comes to what affects consumers, industry, anyone from manufacturing right through to the grain growers and legume growers in the country. I would first like to recognise, before I start, the Whadjuk Noongar people on the land I'm in Perth, Western Australia. We recognise the elders past, present and future. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I would like to first off start by saying, if you do have any questions, there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please pop these in there and we will try and address the questions at the end of the presentation. If we don't have time, however, we will encourage you to email through the questions to myself or the Mintel team after, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. The presentation today will be recorded, so you can access the recording post session. And if you are interested in receiving a slide deck, you can contact Mintel directly with the details that we'll provide you after the session. Today, I would like to welcome Megan Stanton to talk to us today about consumer trends in food and drink. Megan, I'm sure you're going to do an intro of yourself and your fabulous career. So I'll just hand over to you and we'll get things kicked off. Again, encourage everyone to use the Q&A function at any time. If you've got questions, you can also pop them in the chat. Over to you, Megan.
Great, thanks, Charlotte. So yes, as Charlotte said, my name's Megan Stanton. I work for Mintel, which is a market intelligence company. I've been working in the food industry now for over 25 years with a background in food technology and also some postgrad qualifications in marketing. So a lot of my background has been in food ingredients and now really interested to be sharing with you the world of consumer trends. So I work actually at Mintel in the food and drink team, and I report particularly on protein. So obviously that covers some of the grain elements that go into alternate proteins. And I also work in the bakery section as well, which obviously touches very strongly with the Grains and Legumes Nutrition Council. So I'm going to be sharing with you food and drink applications of the 2022 consumer trends today. So I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay, Charlotte, or do you have anything else that you wanted to say before I kick off?
No, that's fine. Take it away.
Okie doke. Let's get started. So where I really want to kind of get us a little bit of an introduction here, we're looking at broad consumer trends and how these are really relevant to food and drink. So before I kick off, I want to just tell you a little tiny bit about Mintel. So at Mintel, we inform our clients right through the consumer journey. So today we're looking at broad consumer trends, but we're also looking at those food and drink trends. We help our clients understand consumer behaviour. We dive into specific categories. We also help you understand how individual products are performing through our purchase intelligence tool. And then we can help you with market sizing and even right through to food service trends. And we work individually with our clients to help them understand their own unique opportunity within whatever category is that you're working with. So today, to make our session a little bit more interactive this morning, what I thought we might do is have what we call a Mentimeter session. So if you've got your phone nearby, you may wish to just scan this QR code, and that's going to let you play along in just a little bit of a quiz as we work through to help me understand what you guys are thinking about some of these consumer trends. If you don't have your phone handy, no problem. Just go to a browser on your PC and enter www.menti.com, and you'll see it prompts you for a code there. You can enter that code into the Mentimeter, and it will allow you to just play along at home with a bit of a quiz as we try and keep the session a little interactive. And as Charlotte said, if you've got any questions, do pop those into the chat function, or feel free to email us once you receive a survey link at the end of today. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to either do one of those two things, just scan the QR code, or to enter into a browser, just so that you can play along at home a little bit. Let's kick off on our topic area. So just to start with a little bit of background, each year at Mintel, our team of trend analysts across the globe analyse how consumer behaviour is evolving across all categories. So when I say all categories, I really mean that. Everything from automotive to leisure activities to smart home technology, right through to food and drink. We then ground these changes in consumer behaviour into our 7 Mintel trend drivers, and they are experience, rights, identity, value, well-being, surroundings, and technology, which are driven by an extensive library of consumer data from 35 markets across the globe. And we know in the last 2 years, we've seen some really very significant changes in consumer behaviour in the wake of the pandemic. How we view the in-store shopping experience has changed, and it's provided both a break in lockdown days, but also the stress of being potentially exposed to the virus. For many, our homes have become integrated places of work, play, rest, homeschooling, and are still actually doing that now as we're still struggling with COVID. And also inflation now being on the rise. Consumers are becoming laser focused on product propositions that offer their definition of value. So our 2022 consumer trends recognise these consumer shifts, and we share predictions on how brands can prepare for the upcoming evolution of consumer behaviour that we're going to see as we move forward. And we've selected 3 which hold great potential for the food and drink industry, and you'll see those on the screen there. In control, enjoyment everywhere, and flexible spaces. So the first of these, in control, explores that the lines of uncertainty, and consumers crave this when things are very uncertain, consumers really crave a sense of control over their own lives. The opportunity here is that brands can empower consumers with information and choices that help them make confident decisions. And this is both in what they're putting into their bodies, but also the impact that food and drink choices are having on the environment, as we know, is something that's really very close to everyone's hearts that we've seen during the last election. Trend number 2 will be enjoyment everywhere, which explores how consumers are now eager to break out of their confines and to explore, play, and embrace novel experiences again, particularly outside the home. Then our third trend explores flexible spaces. And this kind of helps us understand how brands can support consumers by reimagining the convenience and functionality within their physical spaces. But also we see how that's playing out in emergent virtual spaces and how multifunctional that is starting to become. So let's dive in and have a look at our very first in control. So over the last 2 years, we've dealt with all different sorts of rules, restrictions, changes to rules, broken rules, and everything in between. And consumers want to take their power back in ways that are available to them. So truth and transparency is one thing that consumers are really starting to crave. It really comes down to education and helping consumers feel that they're a little bit more empowered in their food and drink choices. So you can see from the statistic here that in Australia, 61% of Australian consumers want to learn more about things than they used to, such as brands and social matters. Not surprising in the wake of the pandemic, where uncertainty over lockdown and its impact on our communities and food supply chains left us really wanting more answers. a lot of the time we were really quite unsure what was going on with things changing such a lot. So what I'm going to do now is just jump over to our Mentimeter quiz, and I'm going to get you guys to give me an idea of the types of informations that you like to look for when you're purchasing your food. So I can see there's already a number of people jumped on there and given their first answer. So do feel free to pop in what it is that you particularly look for when you're shopping for food and drink. I'll give people just a few seconds to be able to pop in their answers if they've just jumped onto that quiz. Okay, so we're starting to see a number of elements that are forming there. Quite a lot to do with health, nutrition, a fair bit to do with country of origin or ingredients, people really wanting to understand where their food is coming from, as well as the health status that it has. A little bit of Australian owned popping in there, which we're definitely starting to see. And obviously right in the middle there, price and cost are something that we're going to see emerge more and more as we unfortunately deal with the cost of living and its increases that we're starting to see. But thanks for popping your thoughts in there. On this theme of transparency, let's have a look at some of the consumer statistics that we have around food and drink. In Australia, we see 41% of consumers checking product labels for ingredients and nutrition detail when they're shopping for food and drink. 25% are interested in buying food and drink products that track online from source to shelf, and we saw country of origin was really important for some of you. And in New Zealand, 32% try to choose ethical food and drink, also something we're starting to see emerge. The takeout here is that transparency remains multifaceted. So food and drink brands have a complex task in communicating nutritional benefits of their products, while at the same time also attempting to give details on its source and then also be upfront about the production processes that are in place. I guess at this point, it's helpful to say it's not necessarily about being perfect, but it is about trying to become better in communicating what it is you're actually doing and tapping into a consumer base that's already invested in trying to understand more about their food and that level of transparency. So throughout today's session, you'll see that we're breaking our presentation down into a now, a next, and a future. So the now allows you to understand what actions you can take for a brand or for your product right now. The next will help you understand the next, say, 2 to 4 years' time, and then the future looks 5 years plus. And you'll see as we move into our flexible spaces that some of this is going to become quite future focused and something that you'll be looking more towards the future to action rather than something you'll action right now. So what we're seeing is a number of examples of governments and brands playing a key role in helping consumers make the same or the right type of health choices. So this speaks exactly to that topic of transparency that we were just saying. On the left, this product, which is a healthier choice shake, saying 0% lactose free. It features milk from New Zealand. It also has a Thai Healthier Choice logo, which is applied to products that have been approved by the Thai Food and Drug Administration. That actually denotes a healthier choice within that wider category. We see a similar product in the middle from Singapore, where Benecol have popped on their label that containing plant sterols is something that will help lower blood cholesterol. And it also features the Singapore Healthy Choice logo. So you'll see that government interaction becoming a part of these products. And then on the far right-hand side there, this product specifically targets those managing diabetes and has a very clear little impact on blood sugar call out on the front of the pack. This brand describes the line as having been crafted to deliver essential macronutrients and micronutrients that have a little impact on glycemic index. Of course, it's not just about aiding consumers' control over their health, but it's also their environmental and ethical interests that we want to be tapping into, particularly as we understand the Australian population has really honed in on that, as we've seen just last weekend. So when we have a look at some products that are doing that really well, we see in Australia, 37% of consumers agree recognisable certifications, so that's things like B Corp or Fair Trade, would encourage them to buy products that claim to benefit the environment. So this means making those credentials very clear on the front of the pack. So the example we see on the right-hand side of the screen from OTUP, which is a Western Australian product that claimed to be the world's first regeneratively grown carbon neutral oat milk. So regeneratively grown is very clear on the front of the pack. And this product is really tapping into that understanding that consumers have about some other alternate milks like almond milk being not so great for the environment as they're touted to be, particularly when it comes to water usage. On the left-hand side, thinking about humanitarian and ethics issues and the topic of gender equality, Cadbury's Get in the Game packs, which were launched to improve the visibility of female athletes. Each purchase of these packs is supported by Cadbury's donation to women's sport in Australia and Cricket Australia, which again is made really clear. You can see there from the logos on the front of the pack. Both these examples show brands being accountable for their ethical and environmental commitments. It's in such a way that it's really clear for consumers and they don't need to go searching for that information somewhere else that's off pack. So if we have a look at some other ingredients, I guess the next stage of trying to educate consumers is through communication. And some of the ways that brands are doing this is if we have a look at transparent pricing. So on the left-hand side there, we see a chili and plum sauce from Outback Spirit, and it has a really transparent pricing structure. They detail that they give 5 cents from every product sold to support the development of Aboriginal Australian native food enterprises. The one in the middle is a coffee liqueur from New Zealand, from Jumping Goat, and they detail that they give at least 10,000 New Zealand dollars of their gross profit towards educating women in Ethiopia, particularly to grow and farm goats. And so that's where the connection comes to their brand on pack there. Then on the right-hand side, the far right-hand side there, we've got a chicken from pasture raised, which is said to be sourced from regeneratively farmed heirloom birds. And they're said to have better health than conventional livestock, meaning that they don't use any antibiotics ever. So if we think about pushing that message a little further, Brewdog is a fantastic example of ethical commitment and commitment to climate change. And they do this really well on the front of the pack. So whether it's carbon neutral certified or rainforest certified or B Corp or Marine Steward Council approved, there's actually quite a large number of certifications out there. But food and drink brands still have quite some room to grow when it comes to actually communicating the impact of what they're doing that's actually bringing benefit to the environment. If we have a look on the left-hand side there, it's a comment from Nestle that says, we want to see clear standards that legitimise high quality insetting and offsetting as valid carbon compensation tools and focus on outcomes rather than certifications. We also want to see widely adopted international standards that ensure transparency and quality for the actions behind carbon credits. But this is quite a mouthful, this comment here, and just to explain a little bit of what's going on there, Nestle are trying to call out for there to be global standards that help try and allow consumers to make decisions between products when it comes to the transparency of carbon credits. And those terms, insetting and offsetting, relate to, so insetting relates to those carbon compensation schemes or measures that happen inside a company. So for example, if a company uses electronic transport in their fleet, if they're using, for example, solar panels on their factory, even if they're trying to use very local ingredients in their supply chain, this would be noted as insetting. Whereas offsetting is really pushing those compensation factors outside the company. So for example, like Brewdog, to a place where maybe they're planting trees on the behalf of the company to offset some of their carbon credits. Brewdog does a really fantastic example on pack of explaining to consumers what it is that they're doing, even down to the point where they try and explain that they're becoming carbon negative and exactly how it is that they're doing that. So take a look at some of the Brewdog communications if it is that you're really trying to understand how people are making on-pack claims about their sustainability and their carbon footprint. So some of these are actions that you can take in the now and the next. What about if we look to actions that you can start getting ready for the future? It's really technology that's going to come to the fore. Whoops, I've gone dark, the light's gone off. There we go. Like I said, it's really technology that's going to come to the fore when we help consumers stay in control in the future. One example is Magic Valley. So you can see on the left-hand side there, which is Australia's first food tech cultivating lab-grown meat in Australia directly from cells without the use of any animals. And they claim that the benefits here are that they can have lower greenhouse gas emissions and that they can have tailored nutrition because they can actually manage exactly what the nutrients are that are going to be in the product that they output, and that they can manufacture the product in urban areas which are quite close to where consumers will consume the product. The second there is Reframe. So it's a paid-for app which has seen huge success in using evidence-based neuroscience exercises to help consumers drink less and live more. And on the far right-hand side there, you'll see from 26 Seasons, a vertical farming enterprise in New Zealand, with one of their sites located in an old nightclub in Wellington. And they allow consumers to eat sustainably, but also have seasonally fresh microgreens all year round because they're managing that in a vertical farming setup. So if we boil all of this down and we think about this trend in control, which is giving consumers a little bit more agency over their own decisions around health and around the environment, we can boil that down to two main recommendations. In the now, we can help people measure and progress on their health and environmental and ethical commitments. We can help shoppers make decisions around protecting their own health and about protecting the health of the planet through the products that they choose to then purchase after they've got the right sort of information. We as brands can also be transparent and accountable. So consumers are expecting companies to provide progress on their targets. Now, this is even if you haven't met your targets. In fact, there's evidence to show that if you're letting consumers know where you haven't quite met your targets, or maybe the timing is a little far behind on your certifications, this can actually garner trust with consumers. And so it's definitely about being honest and transparent in your communications. So if we have a look at our next trend, I'm going to jump straight on, but if you've got questions on this particular trend, please pop them into the chat box there, or do feel free to email those at the end when you get the link to the survey. So in the interest of time, I'm going to keep going, and we may actually have some time at the end to answer some questions if we do well on our timing. So having a look at that new trend, we think about the consumer trend of people coming back after COVID and dying for something a little bit different. And that brings us to our trend, enjoyment everywhere. Hopefully it's a refreshing, fun and relatable trend. We finally want to be able to break out of some of these confines and explore and play with our food in a completely different way that we haven't been able to do so in the last couple of years. We've seen an interesting couple of years, haven't we? We've really had time to dial into those joyful respites that we missed during the pandemic, and we've actually come to quite a new realization of what actually is important in life and what brings us joy. So maybe we even took these things for granted before the pandemic. But food and drink is a really huge part of us enjoying our lives. And we know Australians are indeed a very fun bunch of people. So we see there's a 69%, which is a very significant number of consumers that are describing themselves as seeking fun in all aspects of life. I think it's definitely something that we're all interested in getting back to, is getting out and having a little bit more fun. So I'm going to pop over to a Mentimeter quiz again. We're going to pop to our next question. And when you're sort of looking for enjoyment in food and drink, if I had to put you on the spot and say, which element do you get the most enjoyment from food and drink? What would that be for you? Would it be the taste or the flavour? Would it be the colour? Would it be the texture? Or could you not separate them? And it would really need to be all of the above that you find you get the most enjoyment from in your food and drink. Just a couple of seconds there for people to have an opportunity to make a choice. Okay, we're seeing an overwhelming taste and flavour. And we do know, in fact, that the biggest driver for food and drink is generally taste and flavour. I think for myself, just reflecting, I guess if I enjoy a product, the reason I would want to go back and purchase that product again would probably be more about taste than anything else. Even though I might enjoy or be attracted for the first time to a product by its colour, and I may really enjoy the texture of a product, it's probably the flavour that's going to drive me back to buy that product again. So I can certainly concur with those of you that believe flavour, although I can understand those that couldn't separate it at all, because it is really tricky. It becomes the full package, doesn't it? But these are all elements of food and drink that we've really missed, not being able to go and enjoy the full experience of food outside the home. So thanks for participating. So in the now, we can actually help consumers play with their food through lots of different customizable experiences. When we have a look at the consumer data, we can see that 33% of Indian consumers are interested in products that allow them to customize part of the recipe. On the left-hand side there, last Christmas, KFC re-released their festive gravy burger. This is really interesting because it features a hash brown shape in the middle of the burger that you can see there. And in the middle of the hash brown, it actually has a hole dug out. So the idea is that you're able to pour the gravy in and it sits inside the middle of that hash brown. You pop the top on the burger, and then as you bite into the burger, it's obviously very messy eating. You've got quite an interactive experience there. In the middle is a product from Japan, from a brand called Koika, which introduced an imitation mari tozo, which is an Italian sweet bread, and it's usually stuffed with cream. So they encouraged consumers to use their potato chips and to make the same sort of replica, if you like, just to make potato chip eating a little bit more interesting at home. On the right-hand side, quite popular. If you were a TikTok fan during the pandemic, you would have seen Dalgona coffee really become very popular. But this brand, which is an instant coffee brand, they're called Yongpu. They launched a concentrated coffee liquid for consumers to give them the ability to be able to play with their coffee and create recipes in a different way than what they normally would. Particularly interesting for people that didn't have a coffee machine. It was a way for them to be able to have that quite indulgent coffee experience without needing to have a coffee machine. So all these three examples, they're relatively simple for consumers to create, but they do offer a fair amount of fun and a near guarantee to having something that you want to indulge in at the end, with hopefully not too many mishaps. So if we look a little further and we think about gamified elements that can make food and drink more fun, it's about bringing that multi-sensory features as a core part of your product offering. And we know that younger consumers are really starting to become engaged, potentially more online than they are in the real world, if we're honest. And if you've got children that are my children's age that are very rarely have their heads rarely out of a laptop. Couple of examples here of brands that are engaging with their consumers through gamification. On the left-hand side there, we see Oreo, and they paired together with a gamification app, which allowed them to go through and sort of munch virtual Oreos as an activity for people to play online as they were eating their Oreos. On the right-hand side there, this is an Australian example of Krispy Kreme, who collaborated with Pokemon to launch a range of donuts that marked their 25 years since Pokemon launched into the global gaming scene. So if we move into what's next and bringing multi-sensory features as a core part of your marketing proposition, there's a couple of brands here that have done really simple ways of being interactive with consumers. So on the left-hand side there, this is a brand from India called Mami Yovo, and it instructs consumers to shake the set yogurt. So in that sort of yogurt cup, it's quite set and solid when the product is purchased. But when you shake the yogurt, it actually breaks up the curd and it allows you to drink the product. It also makes quite a popping sound as you shake the product, and it turns it from a solid into a liquid. So that's quite interesting. In the middle is a Thai candy brand called Playmore, and they encourage consumers to top their drinks with a floating gummy to add interest. And of course, that all important element of social media shareability. This one's quite interesting because it's taking something from one category and using it in a completely different category. So it's encouraging consumers to take a confectionery product and then popping that into a drink product. And of course, a local example here from Australia, we know that the wave of bubble tea has really been taken over in food service, but during the pandemic, people didn't have so much access to those food service venues. And so Lipton decided to launch their bubble tea kit at home. And it came with a pouch of chewy microwavable pearls that you could pop into the microwave and then pop into your drink. So great ways of helping consumers be able to actually play with their food and interact in a way that's a lot more multi-sensory than just that one-dimensional food consumption. If we really start to think about the future and how gamification is likely to take over, we start thinking about the metaverse. And as many of us, including myself, are still a little unsure of what the metaverse actually is, I guess if I was to explain it, I would say it can broadly be defined as a virtual reality world where users can interact, game, and experience things as if they were in the real world. And brands have been getting involved in the metaverse in a number of different ways. In the US, fans could get access to free Chipotle via the brand's interactive Halloween experience in the metaverse through a partnership with a gaming platform called Roblox, and that was in the US. I really love this example in the middle here. It's a Colombian lollipop brand called Bon Bon Bum, and they invited consumers to build a new world in the game Fortnite. So what happened was consumers were encouraged to create their own logos, their own flavors, and their own concepts inside the game. So that obviously made the game a lot more fun, but it also allowed the brand to gain real-time data that they could then use to provide inspiration for their own new product development. So it was not only something that sort of happened online alone, the brand was able to get access to that data and really understand what it was that their consumers wanted to see from their products. Perhaps one of the most notable examples of how a brand can win in the metaverse is this example from Wendy's on the right-hand side here. Now, I'm not going to try and explain this myself. I've actually got a video that I'm hoping is going to work that I can show you, which will explain exactly how Wendy's popped into the game of Fortnite and gained a lot of likes and views for their particular brand. Now, Charlotte, I know that when I share my screen, I'm meant to pop a button that allows my sound. So I may just stop and share again to make sure I've shared my sound. So 1 second while I stop sharing and make sure that I share properly with my sound, which I didn't. So I'm glad I done that now. So let's have a look at this video of how Wendy's actually interacted with the metaverse in the game Fortnite.
Let's now talk Fortnite, shall we? It's the newest video game craze, spreading fast among kids, college kids, even celebrities.
Fortnite has taken over the gaming world, becoming the most streamed game on Twitch ever. So when Fortnite announced a new event called Food Fight between Team Pizza and Team Burger, Wendy's saw an organic weigh-in. We found out Team Burger stored their beef in freezers. And Wendy's doesn't do frozen beef. So we got on Twitch, chose a character with red hair and pigtails, dropped into the game, and instead of killing other players, we started destroying burger freezers. Again and again and again, for 9 hours straight. We also declared our mission on Twitter, inviting hundreds of thousands of gamers to Twitch to not only watch us, but join our squad and play with us. And soon other players stopped killing each other and started killing burger freezers with us.
Wendy's, dude, let's go!
Top Twitch streamers took notice.
I saw a Wendy's stream over here, dude.
Oh, you smacking the burgers, freezers?
This shit's lit. This kind of stuff keeps the game fresh.
News outlets were talking about it. Even Twitch posted a highlight reel of Wendy's best freezer kills. But most importantly, the game developers removed the freezers from every burger restaurant, meaning Wendy's had rid Fortnite of frozen beef forever.
Sorry, guys. Hopefully, that will give you a little bit of an indication as to how brands can interact in the metaverse with their consumers. And you would have seen from my script just before, what I find particularly interesting about this is Wendy's didn't engage a media outlet. They didn't have a huge marketing campaign. They actually didn't pay any money to anyone. They just organically created their own character and slipped into the game. And it created such a lot of brand recognition for them and a lot of interaction with their brand. So this is part of the way that the metaverse can really help food and drink brands to engage with particularly the younger audience. I'm going to try and move this further on. Okay. What about in the future when we're thinking about, yes, the metaverse is definitely one thing for engaging in food and drink consumers, but there's definitely going to be consumers that don't want anything to do with the metaverse. In fact, we know that there's consumers who will be the absolute opposite. So if we look at some examples that are doing that really well, on the left-hand side here, Campbell's in Canada, they launched a minestrone soup, which includes tomato seeds on the top of the can. So it has a little round sort of disc on the top of the can. And they encouraged their consumers to actually plant the tomatoes that were then an indication of what they would normally find in their can of Campbell's sustainably produced soup. On the right-hand side, this is a brand called Cultivar Plus. It's out of Chile. And what they encourage consumers to do is to pop this pack of mushrooms on their kitchen bench. There's a small seal that they need to peel off and spray water into every couple of days. And then they have the experience of actually watching their produce grow right in front of them, and helps them sort of have in a way, connect with nature in the real world. So almost a bit of backlash against the metaverse, I guess, if we were to say that. It really keeps consumers in touch with they're really the side that actually interacts with the earth. If we boil all of this down and we think about what the actions to take for enjoyment everywhere are, we can see that consumers just want to have fun. So it's time for consumers to play and enjoy food again, to have a moment of escapism, and also to really engage with those colours, textures, flavours, and elements of food that make enjoying food fun. At the same time, we can explore immersive opportunities. So there's opposing opportunities from that experience that we saw in the metaverse and a lot of online engagement. But at the same time, there's people that want to unplug and they want real world experiences. So brands can do one, the other, or actually sometimes a little bit of both to help engage with those quite disparate groups of consumers. So that brings us then to our last trend, which is flexible spaces. And this trend really is talking about how we have imagined our view to spaces. So over the pandemic and the time that we spent at home, our homes have become offices, they've become schoolrooms, and at the same time, they've been places for us to binge Netflix and overconsume chocolate. And supermarkets have actually completely changed their activity in our lives as well. They used to be somewhere where you would stop, you would take time to browse, you'd maybe chat with your neighbours, and they then became somewhere to get in as fast as you could, get your groceries and get out. Or in some occasions, they actually became places you would avoid, and you may yourself have actually transitioned to completely getting your groceries delivered rather than even visiting a supermarket at all anymore. So we've really changed the way we think about our spaces where we purchase food and drink. So I'm going to get you to pop over to our last Mentimeter quiz and to indicate which of the following have you ever done? Have you visited a cafe within a department store? Have you bought food and drink at the gym or maybe at a music gig? Have you bought coffee at the pool? Have you done a couple of these, or have you not done any of these at all? And you won't be judged. If you've not done any, don't feel like you can't say that. Give just 1 or 2 seconds more for people to answer there. Okay, so we've got a reasonably even spread between a couple there. So lots of people definitely visited a cafe, a department store, or bought food and drink at a music gig or at the pool. A couple of people done a few of these, and none of us have actually done none of those. So I find actually the multiple times that I've shared this presentation with our clients, I've never had anyone say that they haven't done at least one of these options. So you can see that the role spaces play where we normally purchase our food and drink is not necessarily centered around the core purpose of supplying food. often we're buying food when we're doing something else and not just seeking food out in places that are specifically designed to do that. So when we think about getting creative with both our physical and our creative spaces, we can see benefits to both having a physical and a digital space. We see that 49% of Australian consumers agree they missed interacting with others while they were shopping. While in New Zealand, 36% of consumers agree it's easier to find what you want to buy through social media than traditional e-commerce platforms like Amazon. And we're seeing a lot of that behaviour happen out of China as well with WeChat and purchasing online. So it's very much an element of craving human connection that we're wanting to come back to. And it's an appreciation of discovering a greater number of purchase options through social media. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but those algorithms on social media that suggest to you what you could buy are doing way too good a job. They keep suggesting to me that I should buy all sorts of things just because I might have searched for them in the last couple of days. So what I think we've seen from that last statistic that 79% of Kiwi consumers agree that it's important to feel part of a community. And it's this linking together of a community, whether it's seeing your neighbour in a supermarket or having friends share an interesting product that they've found on Instagram. It's this that's actually bringing these two elements of human connection and discovery together. It's that sense of wanting to be part of a community. And we've seen a lot of brands doing exactly that. Having a look at this slide, we've got a couple of really interesting examples of brands that have managed to merge the physical space with the digital space. And it's often called phygital when we put those physical and digital spaces together. On the left-hand side, what you're seeing there is a picture of a brand called the Dry Drinker. Hard to say, but this is an online-only brand that decided that they would do the opposite of being online, and they would put a physical space in a London suburb, and they only sell low and no alcohol products. So the idea of them putting themselves in the middle of a space to attract attention to the trend that we're starting to see, particularly amongst young people, of reducing or completely eliminating alcohol content from their consumption, but still wanting that same experience of being able to go to somewhere physical and purchase products that they still want to enjoy with their friends, that just may not happen to contain alcohol. I really love this example in the middle here. During the pandemic, I'm not sure if people are aware, but obviously TikTok was suggesting to everyone different types of products that you could make yourself, or that they were advertising all sorts of viral sensations online. This company is actually TikTok Kitchens, and they're a virtual dining concept where they launched a delivery-only service, and they'll actually cook up some of the trendiest recipes that were seen on the TikTok app. So at the moment, they've launched around 300 locations in the US, but they plan to launch around 1,000 by the end of 2022. So they're taking the virtual and making it into the physical. The last example there, this is an example out of Singapore. It's from Penfolds, and they announced a phygital in-store display. So how this works is, the concept is that it was kind of bridging the gap between a physical tasting that's difficult to do through regulations. When you go into a bottle shop, often you might want to understand what the different flavours are within different types of wines. So the way they got around this is at the point of display where the bottle is, they also had a screen explaining to consumers what all of the different notes within the wine were, whether it was fruity, whether it had notes of blueberry, and at the same time they had a smelling strip that you could actually smell what those different elements were to try and help communicate what the wine would actually taste like. So some great examples of interacting with consumers and blending together both the physical and the digital spaces. We also know that the spaces for selling food and drink are starting to transform. So on the right-hand side there, no, on the left-hand side, sorry, is Bridge from Zurich. This is a store in Singapore, in Zurich, sorry. It's a fresh food market. So what's different about this store to many other supermarkets that you would go into is all of the installations within the store are completely collapsible and flexible. So a lot of the food that you see there is an installation that's been set up and it's able to be moved completely out of the way. Now, the store actually encourages other groups to come in and set up within their supermarket space. So it can be used for maybe cooking shows, it could be for a different type of pop-up event, or maybe even a concert inside the space. So they're encouraging that space within the store to be used for lots of other things other than just the buying and selling of food. On the right-hand side there, this is a concept store in Dubai called The Name. This is a blended space where you can come and you can have brunch, you can have a coffee, but it's also a personalized gift shop. So you're encouraged to pick which color of mug you might like to drink out of for that day, and it's matched to your mood. You can also buy a whole range of different products like Bluetooth speakers or water bottles, and they can be personalized while you're in the store. Both of these examples show how thinking about evolving the spaces that we actually purchase our food and drink in. The food and drink actually still remains very core as a function of the space, but it allows us to treat these venues as a completely different space at the same time as a place that you might purchase food and drink. So it really is redefining the way we think about the spaces that we purchase our food and drink in. Now we're really going to move into some things that are quite future focused. Not so much this example, but the ones that are going to come afterwards when we're nearing the end of our presentation today. So this is really moving us into the future. This particular example is showing how companies can create an inclusive physical and online space at the same time, particularly for niche audiences. So this is a concept out of China that puts together Tim Hortons and Tencent, which is a China-based multinational technology conglomerate. They do the same, they're involved with, or they own the same types of things as WeChat and QQ. What they decided to do is to launch an esports cafe, which primarily targets gamers. So what makes this cafe a lot different to your average cafe is that it has super fast Wi-Fi connection, it has ergonomic gaming chairs and fast charging ports for controllers. So it's really about identifying the common interests that your consumers may have and then designing a food concept around that not only allows them to purchase the food, but actually allows them to engage in the space where that food is being provided. If we jump to our next example, jump to the next example. This one is a really something next level. So this is a sharing food experience that puts together the analog or the physical world of what we normally do when we go to a restaurant and we eat food and drink together with the very virtual world. So it uses virtual reality headsets. It's called Aero Banquets RMX, and it's actually a virtual reality tasting experience. So I have another video here that helps to explain this much better than I could. So let's hope that this video works, and please just shout, Charlotte, if something goes awry and it doesn't work quite the way it's supposed to. Let's cross our fingers and hope for the best. Okay. Oops. So that is really next level. And I guess for those of you who may be a little kind of skeptical about the online world and how fast this is going to come into play for food and drink, I actually have seen some figures recently showing that during the pandemic, TikTok had more views than Netflix did. So we're really, that younger generation of consumer is engaging online in a way that those other of us that might be a little older really don't engage. So this is definitely the future. And the way, there's a couple of examples that I've shown you about the way that food and drink brands can get involved with the metaverse and those things that are future virtual reality. So it may seem like a long way off, and it's not something that I think is actionable right now, at least not for mainstream brands, but it's definitely something we need to be thinking about as we try and engage with the consumers of the future. So if we think about this flexible spaces in food and drink, it's definitely a consumer behaviour that we've seen change, and the way our spaces are being used are definitely changing. So if we boil that down and we think about what the recommendations would be and the key actions, right now, we can make home comfortable and out of home inviting. So homes become a sanctuary, but it's still, we need to be encouraging consumers to go back and to use those retail spaces that they would have previously enjoyed, but with a much deeper connection. And we can allow brands have ways to be able to get those deeper connections with consumers by using the spaces a little differently. We can also celebrate people's unique identities. So this is really about using those environments for connecting with consumers that have unique interests. From that Tim Hortons Connection store that we saw, we're starting to see a lot more brands and a lot more physical spaces catered to niche consumers and become very concentrated at the consumer that they're trying to reach. So that's something that brands can be a little more aware of, particularly as we see consumers wanting individual products as well. So that brings us to the end, and I see we're right on time. So we're probably not going to, I don't know, Charlotte, if there's any one or two questions there that are worth asking, or whether you want to finish that up right now and I can answer those questions that pop in from the online survey.
I think we're actually fine. We will be sending out a survey post-event to all of our registrants on the call today. So if you do have any feedback or questions, you can pop that in the survey post-event as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for your time. I hope you found that interesting as a bit of a landscape as to what the broad consumer trends are and how they might relate to food and drink, not only now, but well into the future, and how to get yourselves set up for what's coming.
Thank you, Megan, so much for joining us today. It's been a really insightful conversation. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be sending out the recording. Thank you so much. It was a really great presentation.
Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye.